I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation, cases where minors are accused of major crimes. We begin with our youngest defendants, just 9 and 10 years old, and our youngest victim, just 5. It's a story that has mom in tears and everyone wondering how such young children could be accused of such horrific behavior. Here's the story. In a Cleveland neighborhood, a sunny afternoon turned terrifying when a 5-year-old girl was ambushed by children barely older than she is. Police say a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old lured her behind a row of houses, then attacked her until she was bloodied and screaming for help. The attack, captured partly on video, left the community horrified. Now both suspects face serious juvenile charges. Investigators call it an act of shocking cruelty, raising haunting questions about violence at an age when innocence should still rule the day. And that's going to be a theme throughout this hour as we talk about these defendants, and oftentimes the victims as well, but not always, who were so young. Where does this come from? And how does our system handle all of this? It's perhaps the most difficult part of our criminal justice system. Now, what you saw there at the end was a mom absolutely breaking down in tears, and she has become the voice for her child, for her daughter, her 5-year-old, who endured this horrific attack. Nadine Abusada from Scripps News Group has more details from that story for us tonight.
She a mini you.
Yeah, she literally will crack you up. Like, she's so proper, the way she talks, everything about her is just like bubbly.
When talking about her 5-year-old daughter, Antavia Kennebrew lights up.
She is very affectionate.
But sadly, that joyful spirit,
it was horrible,
is broken.
The bubbly 5-year-old, and I know she was not there no more.
We're not naming the child or showing her face because she is a minor. But this horrific story begins on September 13th. Antavia says she left her 5-year-old daughter at a family member's house. Then she got a call. Her daughter was missing. When she arrived, the little girl was already in an ambulance.
I could not recognize my daughter. Her hair was ripped out of her head. She had blood and bruises all over her. Her nails was filled in dirt, and she was unresponsive.
Antavia says her daughter was taken to a wooded area where a group of children attacked her. The allegations, which include sexual assault, are too disturbing to share with you.
That is so evil. It's so evil.
News 5 reached out to Cleveland police regarding this incident. What can you tell me about this investigation involving a 5-year-old allegedly being assaulted?
It is an active investigation that the Cleveland Division of Police is conducting at this time.
In a statement, the department confirmed that the Sex Crimes and Child Abuse Unit is actively investigating a case involving multiple children under the age of 10, both as victims and as suspects.
And we have to protect the rights that the victims have, just as well as the suspects in these cases.
Antavia says her daughter spent about a week in the hospital. The moment she opened her eyes,
she was screaming. When she woke up, she said, "They killed me." She thought she was dead.
The memories came flooding back.
To hear your baby say that she dead, what? A 5-year-old shouldn't even know that word. Like,
how is she now?
She's struggling mentally and behaviorally. She say things that she never said before, more violent, more suicidal things.
She says now her focus is on just 2 things: making sure her daughter heals and getting justice. You posted about it. Why? Why did you want to speak out regarding what happened to your daughter?
Because I needed justice for my daughter.
So when you say justice, what does that look like?
Everybody involved in the pain that was inflicted on my daughter, they get what they deserve.
5 years old. She was just 5. How does she recover from that? You heard the struggles Mom was describing there. I mean, the allegations here: rape, attempted murder, assault, kidnapping, strangulation. All these are serious, major crimes. And you heard there was a group of children. Some were so young they couldn't even charge them. Younger than the 9 and the 10-year-old. That brings us to the first question in our investigation. How should the justice system handle this assault case? It's not a murder. She survived, this 5-year-old. She survived this attack somehow, some way. Here to help answer that question, national parenting and family relationship expert Dr. Sue Kornbluth and attorney Ali Croft-Hamill. Great to have you both here. All the stories tonight are difficult because on both ends of it, like the ages we're talking about. This first one, though, Dr. Sue, let me begin with you. A 5-year-old, a group of kids. The oldest are 9 and 10. The others are younger. Couldn't even charge them with anything. What are your thoughts? How should the justice system handle this? And from a psychological standpoint, obviously, is a huge facet of all of this. I mean, the victim as well. How should the system treat this 5-year-old? How should they treat the 9-year-old, the 10-year-old?
I mean, these are all great questions, and I know my heart goes out to this little 5-year-old, but it also goes out to these other kids that did this to her, Vinnie, because they are children. They are below the age of 10, and this behavior that took place here, as tragic as it is, they learn this behavior somewhere. This is not something that just 10 and younger are participating in. So this is something that they saw, that they watched, that they were also probably exposed to. The legal system, in my opinion, has the duty to rehab all of these children because they are so young, and they will all need intensive therapy for the rest of their lives.
Ali, you heard Mom. Mom wants justice. So now, I mean, the case is going to be handled in our justice system. But what is it? What is it in this case?
You know, Vinnie, I don't know what justice is for a 9 and a 10-year-old, but my concern is this: if it doesn't stop here, where does it stop? So my concern is, obviously, these charges are pretty severe. They're felony charges, what would be considered felony in the state of Pennsylvania, and they're 9 and 10 committing these acts. If it doesn't get fixed now, if they don't get rehab, if they don't get a punishment, if they don't do what the justice system allows us to do, then what's to say what they're going to do when they're 18?
Let me ask you, Dr. Sue, the juvenile system may be able to hold on to them to maybe age 21. Would that make sense?
I mean, they could hold on to them till they're 21. I would hope to God that they would get a lot of treatment if they are convicted, and that would really change so much of this for these children. The problem here is, Vinnie, and one thing that I have a question about, and maybe the lawyer can answer this, is should the parents be held accountable for this as well?
That's an interesting aspect.
Well,
Ali, what are your thoughts about the parents in all of this?
Well, that was my question to you guys. Where are the parents during this? I mean, you have 9 and 10-year-olds luring a 5-year-old behind an alleyway. I mean, I don't know. Most parents don't let a 9, 10, and 5-year-old unsupervised. I'm not to say that they're to blame, but where are they? And where did they learn this behavior of, sexual assault and attempted murder?
Is this a case, Dr. Sue, where it goes beyond just the prosecution, that maybe family services needs to jump into the lives of these defendants, including the ones who didn't get charged here? I think there was a 7 and an 8-year-old involved as well.
Absolutely, Vinnie. This is a case where everything needs to be investigated, including all of the parents of these young children that participated in this behavior. As I said at the beginning, they are young children. They did not learn this in a vacuum. To me, it screams that there probably was prior abuse in their life as well. That's my speculation here, and that's why I think Child Services should really up this and do a full investigation on what was happening in these homes, around them, and why they were even out at this hour of the night. There's going to be a lot here that is going to unfold. And as I said, these are just young kids, and I feel they're victims of what has happened here.
You know, Allie, the other part of this is logistically, like, how do you handle this case? It's, if the attorneys for the 9 and 10-year-old really like stand their ground on a presumption of innocence, et cetera, you get into a juvenile court, you're gonna call in the 5-year-old to testify? You're gonna call in a 7-year-old, they don't get indicted, but uncharged co-conspirator? Like, to me, logistically, even proving this all is kind of a mess.
It is, Vinny, because of the age. And the other concern I have, and I was going to mention this, is you have a 7 and 8-year-old that are not charged. And while I can understand that they're 7 and 8 and they may not appreciate that, we don't charge people that are that young, how else are they supposed to learn? This behavior is not acceptable. I mean, we're talking about rape here, not stealing a candy bar. I think that if there's not some kind of intervention that is monitored by the court, mental health treatment, family services, some kind of batterers assessment, maybe victim impact statement, how else are they supposed to understand what they did is incorrect?
All right, Dr. Sue, Allie staying with us. When we come back, we're going to go to another case. Was justice truly served in the Slender Man case?
Anisha told me we had to.
Why?
Because she said that he'd kill our families.
I've committed so many horrific acts over and over and over.
Do you think you deserve to die for murdering those innocent people?
You tell me. I wish more than anything, David, that I would have done something other than the things I've done in my life.
Are you really a changed man, or is this some kind of stunt?
Interview with a Killer. 2-hour season premiere. Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
It began as a fantasy shared online, a haunting internet myth called Slender Man. But for 3 Wisconsin girls, fiction turned to obsession and then to blood. In the woods outside of Waukesha, a 12-year-old girl was stabbed 19 times by her 2 closest friends, who claimed they did it to appease the faceless figure from the internet. Miraculously, she survived. The girls were later found not guilty by reason of insanity, committed to psychiatric care. A case that still chills parents everywhere about the dark power of digital nightmares. This was such a bizarre case. There was this character that somehow took on a life of its own, the Slender Man, and these like teenagers and tweens became obsessed with it. And in this case, obviously, it went beyond the point of no return, where they ended up attacking. She survived, one of the friends. Now, the 2 girls who were prosecuted for this both were deemed to have mental illness. And as a result of how this sort of played out, it seems that Morgan Geyser, one of the 2, had more serious problems, but also may have been the leader in all of this. I want you to take a listen to some more of the evidence and interaction that we hear with Morgan Geyser, one of the 2 defendant girls.
And then we played on the slide for a little bit. And we went in the bathroom. And then we were singing songs. And Nisha tried to knock Bella out. Bella got all mad and stuff, but I was pacing in circles. Anisha told me we had to.
Why?
Because she said that he'd kill our families.
So what were you trying to do with her when you stabbed her?
Kill her.
It is my opinion that she continues to pose a significant risk of bodily harm to self, others, or property. So in other words, I am not in support of her petition for conditional release at this point.
Morgan has improved quite dramatically and needs things that the institution can no longer offer. I think she's benefited a great deal by being at Winnebago in many different ways, but I think she's reached the end of what Winnebago is able to help her with. There's no suggestion that she is dangerous at this time. And the kinds of things that Morgan needs, in my view, help with socialization, help with education, help with becoming independent, are things that Winnebago can no longer provide in an effective way.
I'm satisfied that by clear and convincing evidence that under the current set of circumstances, Ms. Geyser does not pose a significant risk of bodily harm to herself or others, or of serious property damage.
I came up from behind her. I jumped on her. I tackled her. And I stabbed her.
Do you know how many times you did it?
19. I just want to let Bella and her family know I'm sorry. Never meant this to happen. I hope that she's doing well.
Now, this case goes back to 2014. In 2021, Anissa Weir was granted release. Morgan Geyser just recently finally getting some sense of release, but is now in sort of a group situation with monitoring, ankle monitor 24/7. So there's still some control over her, and this is 11 years later. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Was justice truly served in the Slender Man case? Is this the way, did the system do the right thing here? Here to help with our investigation, still with us, National Parenting and Family Relationship expert, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, and attorney Allie Grothhamel. Allie, what are your thoughts here? Was this the right way? Was this handled properly, where you have one of the two girls released about 7 years later, and we haven't heard anything about her, so hopefully things are working out okay. Morgan Geyser, rougher time, but now getting some sense of release 11 years later.
You know, I think there's some sort of part of justice where there needs to be punishment, and there also needs to be rehabilitation. So clearly we have experts testifying that she has some sort of mental illness, and she was sent to rehab that mental illness. Was justice served in the sense of punishment? I don't know. She is on an ankle monitor. I would assume that the victim's family would probably say no. But if she never reoffends again, and she's, contributing to society, and she's got her mental health under control, and the reason that she committed the crime was because of her mental health, then I believe justice was served.
Dr. Sue, where's the line, before we answer the ultimate question here with you, between understanding mental health and just youth in general, being so immature, right? Being, 12, 13, 14 years old, and mental illness. Is it easy to distinguish and get inside of that mind to understand what they understand, and whether it's mental illness or just immaturity?
So I think that's an excellent question, and it's very difficult, Vinnie, to distinguish that when they are that young. And for me, that's where this still lies. Did she truly have mental health issues? Was she immature and, got caught up and became obsessed with what she was watching and wanted to take it out on somebody or anybody? And I think that's the problem here, is that you just don't clearly know the difference when they're this young, because their brains are not fully matured until they're about 25 years old. So for me, I feel putting her back into society within a group home, it's risky, because when you go down in treatment, you're not watched as carefully. You're not when you're in a hospital, there's help 24 hours around you for whatever you need. And I think the problem here is for the young lady that this happened to, who was stabbed 19 times, to know that this person is still out there. And if she is rehabilitated, that ankle monitor will be removed and she will be part of society again.
Yeah, and that's, Allie, something I remind folks of, because we get a lot of cases where legal insanity is claimed by some defendants, and when you have that ruling, eventually they get released. We don't hold on to the people who are found not guilty by reason of insanity forever. And I'm wondering if there is if there's a better way, like if there's a way to not overstep the bounds of someone's rights who's been found not guilty, but still be able to assert some level of control. And it just seems at some point they all end up released.
I mean, we have a huge mental health crisis in this country. There's no debate about it. I mean, you see it everywhere. You see it at the grocery store. You see it in your personal life. You see it in your professional life. We don't have the facilities and the resources for mental health treatment. And putting someone who commits a crime in mental health treatment, if we had that where they didn't commit a crime, would there be less crime committed? I don't know, but I do think this country needs to do better in helping the mentally ill. And unfortunately for victims, not guilty means not guilty, whether it's, self-defense, a full acquittal, or by insanity. And they get out after they get help. And, it's on them then to continue their mental health treatment or take their medication or whatever their plan is to not reoffend.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to cross your fingers. A big thank you, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, Allie Crothamill. Great to have you on the show. Great insight tonight, as always. Still to come, another case. This one, wow, I never forgot it. It was years ago, but was justice truly served in the King brothers case?
Derek was the older one. He was 13, and Alex was the younger one. He was 12. They basically confessed to the murder of their own father.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of minors accused of major crimes. Our next story is one that shocked Court TV audiences 2 decades ago when 2 young brothers sat in a Florida courtroom accused of a brutal attack and murder of an adult man, their own father. Here's the story. In Florida, 2 brothers, Alex and Derek King, were barely teenagers when police say they killed their own father as he slept. The crime stunned the small town of Cantonment. A hammer, a torch, and a confession that seemed too horrific to be true. But then investigators turned their focus to a family friend, Ricky Chavez, accused of manipulating the boys and hiding their crime. The courtroom became a maze of blame and betrayal, exposing a story of neglect, abuse, and the unimaginable end of innocence inside one family's home. I'll never forget the first day that I saw them on the stand, and I was like, or inside the courtroom at counsel table, I was like, these are because they look younger than they actually are. 2 little kids, the King brothers. What a horrific hand they were dealt. Ricky Chavez, the 3rd guy in the mix in all of this. This is a neighbor who sort of befriended them and let them play video games and do all these things, and was accused of manipulating and perhaps sexually assaulting one of the brothers. And what role did he play in what these children ended up doing to their dad? I want you to take a listen to some of the coverage of this case, this trial that I will never forget.
They think at first that it was the fire that killed him because he's sitting up, and there's something about the way he's sitting that makes them think that he might have died from smoke inhalation. But they see his head injury, and there's blood on a lampshade, there's blood nearby, so he died very violently. So they soon determine that this is not an accidental death, that this is in fact a murder. Terry King was a single dad to 2 little boys, Alex and Derek. Derek was the older one, he was 13, and Alex was the younger one, he was 12. They basically confessed to the murder of their own father. Derek says that he beat his father over the head with a bat. And Alex says that he's the one that gave Derek the idea that they should kill their dad.
The grand jury returned an indictment of first-degree murder. They were not old enough under the law to be subject to the death penalty. So if convicted of first-degree murder, they were looking at life in prison with no parole.
This case had a lot of media interest because it involved these two little boys. And because they were charged as adults in Florida, you could show them. You could take pictures of them. You could put them on camera. And they really looked like little boys.
State of Florida plaintiff versus Derek King defendant. Verdict: guilty of second-degree murder, a lesser-included offense, without a weapon. State of Florida plaintiff versus Alex King defendant. Verdict: guilty of second-degree murder, a lesser-included offense, without a weapon.
It was unprecedented. The judge set aside the King brothers' verdict, in part because the prosecution had brought two different theories of the case, one being that Ricky Chavez was the murderer, and the other being that the King brothers were the murderers. The defense came to the agreement that the boys would plead guilty to third-degree murder.
I think the judge took an impossible situation and he turned it into something that was a much more palatable scenario going forward than any of us had ever anticipated.
Derek is sentenced to 8 years and served 7. Alex served 6 years of his 7-year sentence.
Unreal. Unreal conclusion for the two boys. But it wasn't the conclusion of the whole case. There's also the case involving Ricky Chavez. But let's talk about the King brothers, and it's the next question in our investigation. Was justice truly served in the King brothers case? You heard the sentences, 7 years. Here to help answer that question, criminologist, attorney, investigative profiler, Dr. Casey Jordan. She's also the host of the true crime podcast, Criminal Appeal, with Dr. Casey Jordan, and former homicide detective with more than 20 years working homicides and high-profile cases. It's Phil Waters. Thank you both. All right, Dr. Casey Jordan, your thoughts here about this case. I know you remember it, the King brothers, so young, baby faces inside the courtroom, but a father whose head was bashed in.
For no apparent reason. I mean, their defense, you know, we think and hear so much about, you know, abused kids killing their parents. And 90% of children who do kill their parents have been severely, physically, sexually, emotionally, mentally abused. But we don't have it in this case. I think the worst things they could say that their father, Terry, did to them was stare at them, and they called it mental abuse. Oh, and they got spanked. But, I mean, that's it. We don't have any allegations of physical or sexual abuse on behalf of their father. But we do have allegations of sexual abuse against the neighbor next door who apparently had written a love letter to Alex. And Alex, of course, you know, he would invite them over. This is such a sad case. I would have to say that justice was served, Vinnie. But there were 3 victims here. One of them was their dad, and the other 2 were Derek and Alex, because they were groomed, I do believe this, by that neighbor who brought them to his house, let them play video games, watch TV, smoke marijuana, feeding them alcohol. And I think probably had a huge influence in getting them to kill their parents, getting to kill their father so that he could be with them. So the good news is Ricky Chavez, that neighbor, who I believe groomed and sexually abused them, is still in prison. The very sad news is that Alex died last year of a drug overdose. Yeah. There's no justice in that. He was never given a chance to actually prove he was rehabilitated.
Phil, I want to play for you a little more information about Ricky Chavez because I want to hear your analysis of all 3 of these defendants. Let's take a listen.
I had to call them to the stand to testify as to Chavez's involvement.
Derek, do you know Ricky Chavez?
Yes, sir.
See him in this courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Did you point to him and describe what he's wearing?
He's wearing a dark suit, sitting over there.
What was your dad doing the last time you saw him before you went to sleep?
Telling us to go to bed.
Were you awakened by someone?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Rick. We all walked to the back door. He said, go to his car, that he'd catch up to us in a minute. And so
We went to the front of his car and we hid. He said that there was a big fight and that he had to kill him.
Did he say what happened after he killed him?
He set the fire to his house.
Did he ask you and Alex to do anything for him?
He said that that we have to take the blame for him because he promised his mom right before she died that he would never get locked up again.
Said that there had been a fight, said there had been an accident, said that my dad was dead, and said that he had done it for us, and like my dad would have killed us before he let us go live with him.
Did Rick want you to come and live with him?
Yes, sir.
Alex, did you have a sexual relationship with Ricky Chavez?
Yes, sir.
How long had it been going on before your father's death?
Well, a long time.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment. Not guilty.
When it came back that the boys were convicted and Ricky Chavez wasn't, I think it was just this feeling of, what? Is this really what happened? Is this justice? And that's when members of the jury start telling the press, we don't even really think the boys killed their dad.
Unbelievable. He's found not guilty, but he was ultimately tried and sentenced to 30 years for being an accessory after the fact. Was also found not guilty of sexually abusing Alex. Phil, what are your thoughts about whether or not justice was truly served in this case?
Well, it's good to be back with you, Vinny. I tell you, in a case like this, it is always quite a conundrum. I mean, when you have children involved that act out in this way and commit an act of violence, especially on a family member, on their father. So, you know, that question is has justice been served here? You know, it's always a balance between justice and mercy. And if justice is what we deserve, then mercy is what we need. And there was an abundance of mercy shown here to these boys. Now, I don't know if that means that there was a balance of justice on the other side of that for the father. It's a tough one to call. And in these cases of familicide and infanticide, you know, the sentencing is in normal circumstances is quite low. So I'm not surprised at the outcome here. But I think you have to look at these cases each one and what happened there. My gut feeling is in this particular case, knowing what we know now and the results of the boys getting out and trying to make a life for themselves, and it doesn't sound like they were terribly successful. So I'm not sure that maybe some more time in prison wouldn't have been better for them in the overall picture of things in a disciplined environment where they're able to pursue an education and that kind of thing, and then maybe get out as a more mature person and be a benefit to society. I don't know. These are tough ones to call.
Absolutely. Dr. Casey Jordan, the one thing that always bothered me about this was what the prosecutor did here in trying 2 different theories of a murder. On the one hand, in one courtroom against the boys saying they did it, in another courtroom saying Ricky Chavez did it. To me, that is where justice made a turn off the road in all of this.
And it makes a charade of the court system when the prosecutor is like, well, I'm going to try this theory first, and if it fails, I'm going to try a different theory. I'm going to say the boys did it, and if they're found not guilty, we'll go and say Ricky did it. And that just shows that they don't know what the answer is, and that they're seeking a conviction at all costs without any real regard for what is true justice. Now, I've got to tell you, when it comes to young children this age, killing their parents, it is so imperative that we get to the bottom of the why behind the crime. And in this particular case, I truly believe if they had never met Ricky Chavez, they never would have killed their father. And you have to sit there and go, are they redeemable? Would they have a chance? Maybe being in an institution a little bit longer until they're in their mid-20s would help. But never forget, they didn't ask to be sent next door to hang out with a man who not only molested them, which I truly believe is factually accurate, but then threw them under the bus when the time came. He wanted them to kill their father so that they could be with him. Seemed like a good idea at the time. In the end, he destroyed all of their lives.
Guests are staying with us. Coming up next, another case. How should the justice system handle this young man, Derek Rosa, accused of the murder of his own mother?
I've committed so many horrific acts over and over and over.
Do you think you deserve to die for murdering those innocent people?
You tell me. I wish more than anything, David, that I would have done something other than the things I've done in my life.
Are you really a changed man, or is this some kind of stunt?
Interview with a Killer, 2-hour season premiere, Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
Late one Florida night, a 13-year-old boy dialed 911, his voice trembling as he confessed to stabbing his mother to death. Investigators rushed to the home, finding a scene so violent it broke even the most seasoned detectives. Friends say the family seemed loving, but behind closed doors, tension brewed. Now, prosecutors are deciding whether a child should face adult punishment for an act so incomprehensible. In a story of heartbreak and horror, the Rosa family tragedy asks, how does a mother's love end in a son's rage? Now, there were a couple images that you just saw in that little setup piece that I want to point out to you and give you a little more backstory on, because they're extremely important, extremely significant in this case. Let's begin first with this black and white surveillance image. Okay, what is this? This is coming from a baby monitor. You see the crib on the left. On the right is the victim, mom's bed. Prosecutors say that is her son standing over her the night of the murder. Is this the actual murder? Can't tell, but at a minimum, he's in her room, standing over her as she lies in that bed. That may very well take care of the argument that someone else did this. Perhaps, perhaps not, but it does put him at the scene of the crime. Now, next image, another one prosecutors say is very significant. A selfie taken after the killing, literally with blood on his hands. Literally has a bloodied hand. Another significant piece of evidence for prosecutors. Now, WPLG aired part of Derek Rosa's confession in a police interview. Here's part of their story about that alleged confession.
You killed her? All right. What type of knife was it? Do you know?
It was just a big-sized kitchen knife.
That big?
But he never told detectives why.
You were about to tell me the why. Why did you kill your mother?
Okay. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. And again, this is a case we're tracking here at Court TV. How should the justice system handle Derek Rosa's case? What do you do with this? Here to help with our investigation, back with us, criminologist, attorney, investigative profiler, Dr. Casey Jordan, who's also the host of the true crime podcast, Criminal Appeal with Dr. Casey Jordan. And also joining us, nationally known psychotherapist and author, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, also the host of the podcast and YouTube series, The Pivot, with Dr. Robbie Ludwig. All right, Dr. Robbie, what are your thoughts here about how to handle this case and this accused killer son?
What an awful situation. Clearly we have a 13-year-old who stabbed his mother to death multiple times. And in looking at the case and looking at his diagnosis, he was later diagnosed with autism and ADHD, which really have to be considered in figuring out how to prosecute this crime. Not only that, but he was 13 years old. So people with ADHD tend to be impulsive and they can't control their their feelings or their actions, and sometimes have difficulty with the criminal system as a result. And we know with autism spectrum, sometimes they have flat responses and their interpersonal abilities can be not functioning properly. So we have a kid who probably was extremely angry about some situation in the home. Maybe he had a little sister that was robbing him of his time and attention. Maybe he was angry with his mother for not attending to him in a way that he felt he needed to be attended to. Clearly, none of this justifies a murder or a violent murder like the one that happened on that particular day. But we have to consider this child's age, his developmental disabilities and challenges, and how that plays out in the criminal court case. We don't know whether this was something that he premeditated. It could have been something that happened in the moment. He was enraged, he took a knife, and he killed his mother. And I don't know what the advantage is of trying him as an adult when he's 13, and clearly he's not an adult. It seems to me that this is a person that needs to be incarcerated, but also needs treatment and care in order to do justice for this case.
Dr. Casey Jordan?
I love being on with Robbie, and I love when she brings the psychotherapist perspective on this, because the bottom line is, Robbie, I'm going to agree with you. If indeed he's not the very, very rare teenage psychopath, if, keep in mind, he can have ADHD, he can have autism, but remember, of your kids who kill their parents, 90% are horribly abused. He doesn't fall into that category. 5% are very emotionally disturbed, usually having mental illness like schizophrenia, having hallucinations, delusions. We don't have any evidence of that. And the last 5% are dangerously antisocial. They're psychopaths. It's a very hard thing to diagnose in young people because all of the tests for it are based on adults. So we really hesitate. But you know, the first episode of my podcast is on Paris Bennett, who is one of the rare psychopaths. 13 years old, killed his 4-year-old little sister. And if you ask me, because I've been there for the interviews, I would never let him out. So one of the advantages of trying somebody as an adult is that if you believe that they are that very minute minority, and it is highly overdiagnosed, but we never want to let them out. We never want to let them out because there is no cure. So trying someone as an adult when they are 13, on the surface, it seems incredibly inhumane. And I'm a huge believer in giving kids every chance to turn their lives around and giving them all of the support that they need to do that. But sometimes I think they charge them as adults because the evidence is there of psychopathy, and we do not want society to be the guinea pigs in finding out when we let them out when they're 18 that we were wrong. And I think that's what they're going to do here in the case of Derek Rosa, because he can't tell you why he did it.
I agree. The why is important. Dr. Casey Jordan, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thank you both so much. We're out of time. You know, this is the biggest problem our system of justice faces. Minors so young, doing things so violent, and trying to deliver some form of justice. There is no one-size-fits-all solution in these cases, but the road to figuring out justice in each case is found in one simple question. Why did they do it? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.